On September 10th, he spoke at Emory University in Atlanta about free speech and the war on terrorism. It runs nearly an hour.
Democratic Party to Al-Qaeda. Thank you. Not really trying to be the high-tech guy, but I can't read my own handwriting. And normally I don't even prepare notes for lectures. I just kind of come up here and wing it because that usually works for me. But y'all on TV, C-SPAN's here. So I'm like trying to look like I'm a little more responsible than I actually am. So just bear with me. It's an honor for me to be here. Clearly, there's no shortage of things to talk about. I'm always inclined to let the audience control where the discussion goes because I'm not like Noam Chomsky. I'm not like a good lecturer. I just like to talk, so this is a little bit big for, normally what I just do is let people shout questions as I go. You don't even have to raise your hand, you just yell. I don't know if it's gonna work now, and besides CNN, not CNN, C-SPAN. The hell with CNN. I don't know if they'll be able to hear your question. We'll play it by ear, but one thing about when I do lectures is I really never know what people want me to say because I'm kind of in the journalism world, but not really, and it's entertainment, but not really because it's comics and nobody reads. It's politics, it's all these different things, and it's always more interesting when you guys can sort of let me know where you want the conversation to go. So we'll play it by ear. Maybe what we'll do is just start the Q&A really early, so you guys can say what's on your mind. I'm 28 years old. Like you said, I graduated from the University of Maryland. The degree in Afro-American Studies and Social and Cultural Analysis. Started sort of conceptualizing this strip around 94. Started actually doing it in college in 96, early 97. Got a contract by the end of 97. Strip launched in 160 newspapers on April 19th, 1999. And here I am today. Got to set the right tone. I am not a motivational speaker. I am not here to make you feel good about yourself or the world around you. I'm not the guy to stand here and say you can do it because, maybe you can't do it. That's the one thing. 2, I am not a black leader. Any of you expecting to get all riled up, get all excited, motivated to go out there and fight the man? It's just not me. We're gonna keep the tones low, we're gonna stay calm, we're just gonna have a nice little casual discussion. 3, I am not a scholar. I watch C-SPAN and C-SPAN 2, and I see really, really smart people go on and on and on and on and on, and they say brilliant things, and I go, wow, I can't do that. So I'm not even going to try. I got 1 degree. And, I was lucky to get that. So, I'm a satirist. I draw cartoons. And I stand sort of looking at the world, just throwing out my opinions in a very sort of selfish and self-absorbed manner because I can. And I can talk about who I want to talk about, and I get the last word 7 days a week. And, you know, people can try to talk back, but it never really works out for them. That's the great thing about satire. You know, as Gary Trudeau once said, it's selfish and it's unfair, and that's what makes it great. It doesn't play by any rules. You know, I'm a professional smartass. And which, you know, it's a great and terrible thing. You know, on the one hand, it's a very loud voice. The Strip is syndicated to, you know, something around 20 million people a day. It's a tremendous pressure. It's a tremendous responsibility. Even though I try to be as irresponsible as I can, you know, the enormity of it is not lost on me. And even more so because we live in an age and an era where nobody's really saying anything. Nobody really wants to say what's actually going on. And, you know, hip-hop used to actually fill that void. You know, hip-hop music used to be that sort of uncompromising voice of young black America and, you know, to a certain degree, the political left. And that's no longer with us. I mean, I like Ludacris like everybody else, but... So, you know, I'm left in the somewhat unique position of having a voice that's perhaps a bit louder than it needs to be from a guy who's, you know, still in his 20s and doesn't have a graduate degree. I find myself in the position of having to talk with authority on things that I probably shouldn't be, because I don't have the experience or the academic background to be doing it responsibly, which actually doesn't stop me, but maybe it should. I have more opportunities to say something profound than I'll ever have profound things to say. But I got the job. So we're here on the eve of September 11th. How many of you have been watching the news over the past few days? Yeah, come on. You guys feeling better? Are they making you feel at ease, and are they working you through the pain? There's a great piece in The Onion that's up now about that whole idea of, you know, which network is going to save America. You know, it used to be guys like Walter Cronkite, they just reported the news, but you know, now we have Ashley Bamfield or whatever her name is, and Katie Couric, and people who are so sympathetic and so unapologetically in support of our heroes, the New York City Police Department, the New York City Fire Department, and America and our war on terrorism. And, you know, I've been watching this for several days straight. And, you know, I think they really understand. Like, what happened to those firemen was really sad and really tragic, but they're getting me to the point where I don't ever want to see another fireman again. I'm firemaned out. And it's just another it's part of this sort of ongoing media fiasco that actually started the morning of the attacks, when I woke up and turned on the television. And I was in LA, so it was, you know, a few hours after it happened. And I'm looking at the towers burning. They had already come down, but I was looking at old footage. And like, there's this really dramatic music playing, and there's this Attack on America logo that's already been designed, and it's got a little crosshair. And I'm thinking, when did y'all design this? This just happened. You got a logo. It didn't look like it was rushed. It was nice. they had title graphics before and after they weren't really going to break, but it was like a miniseries. And I'm watching this footage, and I'm watching people jumping to their deaths, and there's this music, this John Williams style music sort of swelling underneath it. Like, who's in the control room like, yeah, we gotta sort of punch this up. We gotta figure out some way to get them into it. We need some music. Because it just doesn't have enough drama alone. And that just kind of struck me as odd. Like, it felt a little sort of disrespectful to me. Apparently not to anybody else, because it just got worse from there. And instantly, the entire establishment of the news media just simultaneously decided to just abandon any notion of, impartiality or lack of bias or any of that. They just all became cheerleaders to America, to the administration. They had the little flags, they had all this stuff. I didn't want to see that. I was a little disappointed. I'm like, yeah, I don't care if you're a patriot. Quietly, I don't care if you're hurt. I want to know what's going on. All these dramatic displays of who's more emotional and who's more sad about what's going on. No, honey, you're an anchor. Report the news. That's your job. Just because everybody decides to be unprofessional at the same time doesn't make it right. So, and I'm like everybody else, Well, maybe I'm not, because the first thing I thought of was, all right, I need to get in the car and drive to Mexico. Because I'm calling friends like, it's 2.5 hours to the Mexican border. We should probably leave now. Pack if you want. I got a 2-seater, so I can only take one other person. Unfortunately, they were like right after, as I'm literally having these planning discussions, they closed the borders down, so that was no longer an option. But, but it's a problem. The way the media handled September 11th, from the moment it happened to today, a year later, is a very serious problem. Because it really was a tremendous moment for America to reevaluate its place in the world. To really look back and say, wow, somebody's really mad. And I'm not saying you can't be angry, and I'm not saying you can't be hurt, and I'm not saying, as human beings, you can't feel that sense of, okay, we got to get these guys. That's natural. But let's not forget that this is the same media that basically said that, Bush is an idiot. He's stupid. On September 10th, you could say Bush is dumb. And nobody would really get mad at you. I mean, they would say it in nice ways. They'd say, well, Bush, he's a little inexperienced. But, Powell and Cheney are smart. That Condoleezza Rice, boy, she's bright. Yeah. If you're standing there and they're talking about how smart everyone around you is, they're calling you stupid. And suddenly, that's wrong. Suddenly, Bush is a great man. Why? Because, nearly 4,000 people died on his watch? That makes him a great man? His approval rating goes up to, 90%? Because thousands of people died? So what if, 10,000 people had died? Would it have been at 95%? And I found myself sitting and trying to figure out, okay, what exactly did this guy do that's making him popular? I mean, I saw when he sort of went out and talked to the firemen, and he did that dead or alive thing, and, we're gonna get him, and he was kind of going off the cuff, so he wasn't reading, so he wasn't stumbling over words. It's like, just because you go from being functionally illiterate to, being able to string a couple of sentences together doesn't really make you JFK. And everything changed, and you know what? Nothing shows you how cowardly the left is, other than the response to September 11th. Suddenly, black people became rednecks. Black people were like, I love Bush, I hate Arabs. Yeah, get them. What the hell's the matter with you? Congress, the Democrats, if Bush had gotten on television and said, I can link the Democratic Party to Al-Qaeda, they would have voted to bomb themselves. I have never seen a more gratuitous display of political cowardice than the entire Democratic Party over the past year, with one singular exception, which would be Congresswoman Barbara Lee. So I decided I was going to do something different, so I just said, hey, you know what, I don't like staying up all night anyway. I don't mind if I lose this job. Let me go ahead and just tell some jokes no one else is going. Let me say some things no one else is going to say. And, so I got I got temporarily removed out of the New York Daily News. It's okay. And that was a big story. And because it happened at a time where the nation was dealing with these issues of, limits to free speech and, is the administration clamping down too hard, and Bill Maher was about to lose his show, and the country was changing, and where was free speech going to fit into all this? But again, my focus has sort of stayed on the media. What happened to reporters who actually wanted to find out the truth? And where did we get all of these kind of silly-looking cheerleaders for the administration? And, it's a couple things. One, over the years, more and more people are turning into fewer and fewer sources of information. And those sources of information are being consolidated and they're being owned by fewer and fewer people. So you've got 6, 7, 8 guys who control 90% of what the industrialized world sees and hears and reads, or particularly America. And then I think, on just a more basic level, there's a lot of pressure and incentives for, reporters who deal with the president and the administration to behave. And this was, I had this described to me by some guys who were interviewing me for a show that'll remain nameless. But off camera, we were having a discussion as to, well, why did the media really roll over like they did? And what is it? Why doesn't anyone want to be the guy that stands up and says, no, I found out that there were remote controls in the planes. Like, no, here's the pipeline that's supposed to run through Afghanistan. Here's why it's all happening, and the government's lying to you. Where's that guy? And, an experienced journalist pulled me aside and said, if you do that now, you get cut off. Everything is about access to the important people. Everything is about getting the leaks from the White House and being in that inner circle. And if you step out of line, you get removed from that circle. And somebody else is just waiting to take your place. So there's the media consolidation, and there's this sort of, this pressure for journalists to not cross the line. But I think also everybody was just really damn scared. Like scared in a way Americans had never been before. And fear will make you do some crazy things. And journalists were scared, everybody was scared, and more importantly, they knew you were scared. So as long as you were scared, you'd be tuning in to them so they could tell you what to be afraid of. And it's been going like that for a year. I mean, now it's just sort of become just gratuitous exploitation of sad people. It's like, oh, look at her. She lost a husband. Let's get her on the air to tell her whole story. And then let's get 8 or 9 or 10 widows just like her until it's just like an orgy of just depression and sadness and death. But what's the point? This isn't news. The fear of the unknown is what has driven America crazy. So crazy that it will throw its support behind a functionally illiterate president. But let's get one thing straight. Americans are not patriotic. Americans don't really care about freedom. They don't really care about liberty. They don't care about any of that. That's now the shield that we wrap ourselves in to protect us from the evils of the world that we don't know anything about. Because, if Americans really cared about any of that stuff, they wouldn't have been holding signs that said, sore loser, the year before, when America was really attacked. And somebody took over the whole country who was never elected president. People die, and I don't want to trivialize the deaths because it's serious. But in countries, there are catastrophes. People die. People come together and they move on. But when there are coups, when there are just, presidents in exile, that completely and totally and permanently changes the course of a country's future. The attack on America happened during the election, and nobody cared. The reason why Bush is in office is because the guy who really didn't care about freedom and liberty and democracy was Al Gore. Because Al Gore would rather be a loser than actually stand up for the thousands of black people who were disenfranchised in Florida. The White House is at stake. You won. And you're gonna sit this one out? No, that's okay. I'll try again next time. What? So, I'm in this position, and there's a handful of us who are like, no, let's peel back the layers. Let's actually figure out what's going on. And, when I say peeling back the layers, I'm not really talking about the conspiracy theories. I like conspiracy theories. I really do. I find them great reading. They're very interesting. And since I already am inclined to have a disdain towards the people in power, I'm inclined to believe them. And there are a lot of really interesting theories about what happened on September 11th. The problem with conspiracy theories is you can't prove them. And at a certain point, you're just not going anywhere with them. And you can come out and say, Flight 93 was shot down, and you can say, everyone in the Bush administration is affiliated with oil, and these are the last big oil reserves on the planet, and they needed to get the Taliban out of the way so they could run these pipelines through Afghanistan. And you could talk about remote-controlled airplanes and government collusion akin to, Pearl Harbor. But the wonderful thing about the Bush administration is you don't have to dig anything up. You don't really have to snoop around and find that damning piece of evidence that's going to prove they're all criminals. No, they're all criminals. They know it, you know it. They don't really care that you know it. You could actually put each of them in jail based off what they print in the New York Times. We're not, this isn't some crazy underground internet rumor. These things happen. They stole an election in front of broad daylight. Nobody did anything. Once you send that message, they know they can do whatever they want. Halliburton. Yeah, so? You think Dick Cheney's worried about you? Dick Cheney's like, yeah, I'm a crook, so what? What you gonna do? Nothing. It's, I was just on Donahue and I said, they're gangster for real. For real. They're on some Suge Knight level of gangster. They will come and they will look at you, they will punk you, and you will like it. And you do, and you go, yes, I love the president. Yeah, you like it. They come and they say, you know what? I ain't handing over no papers to nobody. What I did at Halliburton, that's none of your business. But you're trying to make that same stuff illegal. So, what is their problem? And everybody goes, well, there's a problem. And they're like, yeah, I thought there wasn't gonna be no problem. I mean, they're really on some just thug stuff. Bush, did you ever use cocaine? It's none of your business. It's against the law. You're running for president. And he looked at the American people and said, mind your business. And you know what? Everyone said, maybe I should mind my business. Yeah, it's, that's how they carry it. That's how the powerful are supposed to carry it. They're not supposed to be evil. But, that crew is powerful. Condoleezza Rice. I met Condoleezza Rice. It's like meeting Darth Vader. It's nothing. It's nothing funny about it. Cause I'm thinking, I'm gonna tell Condoleezza Rice what I think about when I see her. And I met Condoleezza, and suddenly I'm like, oh no, she can kill me and my whole family with a phone call. I'm not messing with her. That's how they roll. What was she on the board of directors at Mobil or something like that? It's like, all those stories about those corporations that go over to Nigeria and kill people over, yeah, that's her. That would be Condoleezza Rice. This is what I like to say to put the current administration into some perspective. Colin Powell, as a general, over the years, probably directly had a hand in, let's say, at least 100,000 human deaths. That's on the conservative side. I don't know exactly how many people died in the Gulf War. I've heard as many as 500,000. But let's just say he's directly killed, not by hand, but he's been the guy that says, okay, those people over there, that whole ethnic group, they gotta go. Kill them. And then they just disappear. That's him. Hundreds of thousands, potentially, of deaths that he's directly involved in. And he's the nice guy in the administration. And think about that. Colin Powell is the guy that goes, hey, you guys are going too far. He's like, slow down. I kill people for a career, and I don't even want to kill people like y'all want to kill people. And, you know, at least to his credit, that was his job. You're supposed to do your job well. If your job is to kill people well. That was his job. He did it well. I don't know how killing people became part of being the governor of Texas. But, you know, that's the rest of the crew, they just kill people for fun. And why do they get away with it? Well, because the entire United States population has been punked, and the first people to get punked were the Democrats. Because they're so scared, all that political power is right in their grasp, and they literally won't go after it. Now, Bill Clinton had sex, and there was an impeachment hearing. These guys have broken every law under the sun, and nobody on the left will say anything. Now, whose fault is that? Well, it's kind of yours. It was yours until the vote stopped counting. You used to be able to vote, but now you can't even do that, so now it ain't really your fault no more. America has let its government be hijacked. And now we're left to sort of stand around and say, okay, how do we get it back? Which would be an incredibly difficult proposition, even if there wasn't the backdrop of never-ending conflict, which is what we're now in. Perpetual war, a war that doesn't end. It's going to be a different kind of war. Yeah, it's going to be the war that kind of like ruins the planet. It's going to be the kind of war that, you know, you can do whatever you want, and under the guise of national security, you will never tell us anything. You know, my idea of a war was you go to Germany, you kill the Germans, it's over. You do reparations, you make up, life goes on. How are you going to have a war against a guy? A terrorist is a guy. It's a dude. How are you going to have a war against a specific kind of dude? How are you going to kill every terrorist? I could decide tomorrow to be a terrorist. It's like, there will always be terrorism. So there will always be a war on terrorism. This country is screwed. It's never ending. It's never going to end. And what are you guys gonna do? Now they can put you in jail. You ain't get a lawyer. What? They will hold you for as long as we want. How do you reclaim your government in the face of such overwhelming oppression? Because that's what this is. You're gonna go invade Iraq? Iraq has been quietly plotting and scheming to build weapons of mass destruction for the last 10 years. Yeah, there's another way to look at that. It's called they've been minding their own business. Iraq's just been sitting there. Every time I hear about something blowing up in Iraq, it's because we bombed it. What's Iraq done to you lately? Yeah, and you know what the reality is? You have no say in what happens in Iraq. I mean, people will talk about it, there'll be a debate, but at the end of the day, whatever the Bush administration wants to do, they're gonna do. So you can't choose your president, you have no say in foreign policy, your leaders commit crimes, you can't bring them to justice. what's left for you to do? Well, you either come to the sad realization that you no longer live in a democracy, and you go back to the Declaration of Independence, and you realize that at that point you have an obligation as an American to overthrow that illegal government, which is tough because then you'll end up dead or in jail, which is not cool. So you can either do that, or you could turn on the news and listen to Bill O'Reilly tell you everything is okay. Or what's the guy's name on Hardball? Yeah, or that redneck, Imus in the Morning. Yeah, you can listen to these guys, Dennis Miller. And they'll tell you everything is fine. And Brian Williams will tell you everything is fine, and Peter James will tell you everything is fine. And you go, everything really is okay. It really is the rest of the world that has a problem. It's not us. Now, I know you all know better, because you guys are here. So I know I'm just preaching to the converted. But it does leave us with a sort of profound dilemma that, many, many other people have articulated better than I have tonight. But, it just goes back to the same thing, which is, what exactly are we as Americans going to do to reclaim our government? And what are the consequences of inaction? And sadly enough, I really don't have the answers. The one thing I do know is that truth is now available in such small quantities that it's actually profitable. I mean, this has been my experience. I mean, I criticized the government. My world didn't end. They didn't kill me. They didn't throw me in jail. I got on Nightline. I got an Image Award. I got book deals. I mean, there's a fear of speaking out. There's a fear, and that fear has been present in this country really since the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and the COINTELPRO program, the Black Panthers. That set a tone and sent a message to the country that institutionalized change will not be tolerated in any form. And everyone just got scared and quiet. But you have to ask yourself, okay, there's no action without organization. There's no organization without a common ideology. And there's no ideology without education and information and truth. So, why are you so afraid to speak up? Because so many people want to know what's going on. I mean, look, Stupid White Men, Michael Moore's book, has been on #1 on the New York Times bestsellers for a long time. He sold a lot of copies. People want to know. They want to find some dependable way, which i.e. not the internet, to get an alternative source of information. They don't know exactly how, and again, it's not the wild conspiracy theories. They just want to know what's going on. It's rare that anybody nowadays will tell you the truth. So the truth becomes profitable. Michael Moore makes a lot of money. I don't know how Ralph Nader does. I mean, part of the key is understanding the dynamic of the media and how it works in relation to politics. If Martin Luther King were alive today in 25, nobody would know who he was because he'd never get on TV. Churches, all that stuff, that don't matter. There is a crisis in political leadership. There's a crisis in leftist leadership. There's a crisis in black leadership. with the black struggle, which is ultimately intimately tied to all things on the left. We have a bunch of sort of leftovers from the civil rights movement. And, you know, you've got people who are either media savvy, but their skeletons have caught up with them. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, they are no longer relevant to the discussion. Or you've got people like Al Sharpton, who I actually have a great deal of respect for in terms of his convictions and his desire and courage to stand up and say things that nobody else will say. But Al needs a media consultant. Bad. I mean, this is what I was saying earlier. Ralph Nader, I really like. He shouldn't have run for president because he's not media savvy. Michael Moore should have ran for president. People like Michael Moore. It's the same thing. But Michael Moore will make you laugh. Michael Moore knows how to deal with the media. The next generation of leaders has to be that sophisticated. You can't be so righteous in your disdain for the system that you don't use the system effectively to get to where you need to be. You know, there's a reason why underground rappers are underground. Because, like, they refuse to do anything that will actually let their music be heard. And then they get mad that nobody listens to them. You know, I knew a musician, well, I want to do songs, but I don't want to have hooks. Okay, then you're never getting a record contract and you're never getting played on the radio. But that's not fair. Okay. I mean, anytime you're dealing with communicating to the masses, there's a way to do it. And you can't just decide, I'm going to do it a different way, when no one knows who you are. You can start to change things once you have a certain amount of notoriety. But in the beginning, you actually have to get your message across somehow. It's like the Matrix. It's a fine parable of our time. If everyone's plugged into the same system and you're trying to say something real important, like, hey, computers are running the world, but nobody can hear you because they're all plugged into the system, then you actually have to plug into the system. That's not me, is it? No, okay. Then you have to plug into the system in order to get your points across. You have no other choice. And that's where we're at today. Everybody is plugged into the same mass media outlets. That's the only place they get their information from. You know, Michael Moore, Stupid White Men, you know, is out. It's put out by a publisher who's owned by some huge major conglomerate. It's Sony or by one of them. Does that make him a hypocrite? No, makes him smart. What's he gonna do? Publish a pamphlet? You're gonna have meetings in his basement? The Boondocks does not run in alternative papers. It runs in the Washington Post, it runs in the New York Daily News, it runs in the LA Times. And people say early on, how come you ain't put in no black papers? Because I want people to read it. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not doing this for my friends so we can sit around and say, hey, look how cool this is. Jokes. No. If you're going to play the game, you really should play to win. How long has it been? How long are we going to do? What are we? Huh? You ready for questions? Who wants to ask questions? I'm not done, but we can. You know, okay, I've been instructed that you are to walk to the mic if you want to be heard, if you want to be on TV.
Hello, Mr. McGruder. Thank you for your speech. Just like to ask, when you talk about G.W. Bush's 90% approval rating after the attacks and what exactly did he deserve that, well, then maybe what else do you think he could have done to deserve a 90% approval rating? And likewise, what would Al Gore or Ralph Nader or even Pat Buchanan have done to deserve a 90% approval rating with September 11th?
Well, that's a fine question. What Bush could have done, I can't speak for everybody else. But for me, what he could have done is said, you know what? 3,000 or so people died because my dad was an asshole. And I'm really sorry to all those brave firemen and policemen who died because we were just really trying to take over the world. And I'm sorry. So, and since I was never really elected, I hereby resign the presidency to our president in exile, Al Gore. Now, what Al Gore would have then done is the same thing Bush is doing. He'd have bombed some people. I mean, look, who's the guy? I keep forgetting. Matthews, Chris Matthews, hardball. You know, I don't like him. But in the days immediately following September 11th, and he actually might deny this now, but I saw him, he was on TV, and he actually said something that made a lot of sense. It's one of the few times he has. He said, part of me thinks a huge, massive bombing campaign is exactly what the terrorists want. Because it will prove their message to the Islamic world, which is that we are evil people and we want to kill Muslims. And that will help them get more recruits. So, you know, I think that the only way to go is to say, look, one, in fairness, we have killed more people on every continent, probably every year. As the United States of America pushing forth our agenda, our foreign policy interests, we've killed more people than we'll ever lose. And that's why people hate us. And that's why people want to kill us. And he could say, you know what? If we call it war, they can call it war. Calling it terrorism is just a cheap shot. That's the way they fight. We fight differently. You know, we support an illegal, oppressive regime to go into countries and oppress the masses because, you know, those corrupt leaders are in bed with our corrupt leaders. Iraq, Saddam Hussein is so crazy, he gassed his own people. He used chemical weapons. Yes. And guess who taught him how? Colin Powell. When he was a part of the Reagan administration, the U.S. military was helping the Iraqi government plan and execute military attacks against the Iranians. They were using chemical weapons regularly on those attacks. Nobody cared. You know, bin Laden, you know, remember Rambo 3? Remember who he was running around with? That was bin Laden. You know, I don't know if this would get him the approval rating, but what he could have done for me is tell the truth. Say, you know what? We're not nice people. We don't love peace, we don't love freedom, and we don't love nonviolence unless we're talking about when black people get mad. We're corrupt and evil and we don't deserve to be in power. Now, if he said that, I'd give him a pound. Yeah, but I do think Al Gore would have basically done the same thing. I think that if Ralph Nader, I like to think if Ralph Nader had gotten elected, which would never happen, but if he had gotten elected, literally the whole world would be so different by September 10th, and September 11th would not have happened. I mean, a lot of this hatred towards America comes from our support of Israel. Because, quietly, I got a feeling that these people really don't hate American culture as much as they act like they do. These people know a lot about American culture, about American movies. American culture is a pretty powerful thing. But they don't like Israel. We keep supporting Israel. So every time they say an Israeli helicopter killed some people, where'd they get the helicopter from? They got from us. So every time you hear Israeli helicopter, Israeli F-16, just interchange it with American, and maybe you'll start to understand why these people don't like us. But don't get it twisted. The Arab world doesn't love the Palestinians. They just don't like Israel. But that's a whole different subject. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But, as mad as you are, you say, look, if it happened, you say, this is really wrong. One, forget our foreign policy. I'm going to resign because our domestic security is a mess. He should have resigned just off the strength of that. Just off the fact that every system put in place to protect us can all fail at the same time, 4 times in one day, is reason enough for a president to resign. Think about all the things that had to go wrong. The FBI had to fail. The CIA had to fail. The FAA had to fail. Airport security had to fail. But that's not all. The U.S. Air Force had to fail. I read somewhere there were 14 planes assigned to protect the entire northeast section of the United States, and many of them were unarmed. A lot of the planes that were scrambling had no weapons. What were they going to do? Tell them to land? Oh, our pilots were going to ram commercial jets to save a building? I don't know a lot of Air Force pilots. Oh, I'm sorry, Air National Guard pilots. But something tells me they don't exactly have that kamikaze spirit. It's massive failure on every level, and they need to be held accountable. Or he could come out and say, guys, I really didn't win, and I've been having trouble getting some things through Congress, and we just got to get that oil, folks. I don't think you understand. Maybe this wasn't the best way to go about it, but we got to get the oil. If y'all really want to drive electric cars, you let me know. But we got to get the oil. I mean, be honest. There's a lot of things he could have done. Hopefully they would have all ended with resigning. But there's a lot of things he could have done. He could have just said, forget all that. He could have just said, you know what? I will not be a part of the cycle of violence. We have resources, we have agents, we will hunt down those responsible, but we will not avenge the death of innocents with the death of more innocents.
Due to audio difficulties, we can't show the rest of the question and answer